people of all ages. We got a special episode today of Warthog Radio, episode 16. Our guest is arguably the most iconic voice in the Halo franchise. It's the voice you're going to be hearing throughout your whole time playing multiplayer. It's the one, the only, the voice of God, Jeff Steitzer.
Hey, folks. How are you?
This is surreal. We took a gamble. We were like, there's not a lot going on Halo-wise outside of the announcement of the Halo remake. And I was like, I think I've seen Jeff Steitzer on my timeline on Facebook. I'm going to send him a friend request and ask him if he'd like to do something with us. Maybe it'll work, but hey,
Well, I had no qualms whatsoever about doing this because for the longest time, nobody ever got in touch with me. It's like I was here and people would say, you must do these all the time. And I'd say, well, no, actually, nobody has reached out to me. I've not heard anything from anybody at all. As I often say, I didn't know for the longest time that we had fans. I didn't know for way too long that the first game had been a big success. Here's how I found out. I'd gone in, I'd recorded all the stuff for Combat Evolved. And I walked out at the end of the session. And, before I leave, I always go, is that everything? Anything else you need? Nope, we're good. Thank you so much. And it's like, okie dokie, have a good life. Thinking that would be the last time I would see anybody from that group. And about 2 years later, I guess, or something, I get a call from my agent at the time. And she says, hey, you remember that game you worked on? I said, which one? She said, Halo. And I went, oh, yeah, I do, of course. And she said, well, they're doing a sequel and they want you back. I went, oh, cool. I said, so I guess it must have gone pretty well. And she went, I don't know, I guess. That's how clueless we were, right? So, yeah, for the longest time. And I think that a lot of people think that I'm unapproachable. Those people who've had a chance to meet me very quickly learn that I'm not. Mostly because I am so completely conscious of how unbelievably fortunate I am to have been chosen to do the job I do in the game. And because the fans of the game are so incredible and, unbelievably generous and kind. And, they're much nicer to me than I sometimes am to myself, or that certainly as my children are, too. Although I adore them. And so, and I've talked about this with Steve Downs and Jen Taylor. I think that, we all feel like it's not in any way a trial or anything to try to make ourselves as available as we can. Obviously, we all want to live our lives and, we aren't always available, but I think we try to be as much as we can. It's one of the reasons why we all end up going to these conventions, and which I adore. I love meeting people at those. So, yeah.
Well, we're very thankful.
When you got in touch with me, it was like, of course, sure, why not?
Yeah, I was expecting you were booked back-to-back weekends, like busy all the time, flying here and there.
Well, I'm busier than I expected to be at this time of my life. I reached a certain point. The last stage performance I gave was before the pandemic, 2019. It's been 5 years. And it was a new musical, and I had a thoroughly good time playing the role I played. I adore the creators. They were really remarkable people based in New York. And then, everything got shut down because of the pandemic. And when we came back, it was like, I don't know, I just don't feel like, doing that anymore, doing stage work, because it's a huge investment of time and energy. And the pay is awful.
Okay, well, that's the big one.
Yeah.
Well, if you're going to do it, plus, there was a time when I thought it was really cool, that I spent all my time in dark rooms performing or rehearsing and stuff. I don't think that anymore. I think, no, I kind of like, having a life. And the nice thing about going out and doing conventions, which I've only been doing for the last 3 years, I guess, is I get to go to a lot of cities I've never been to. I've been stupid about it. I tend to go just in time for the convention, and then leave immediately afterwards, which means I don't see any of the cities I've been visiting. But I have every intention of changing that by showing up earlier. I'm going to be in Connecticut within a couple of months, and I intend to show up earlier than that. Maybe go see my brother up in Maine, and then go to New York and see, everybody in the world I know there, which is a lot of folks.
It's a lot of travel.
Yeah.
It's more, again, I never expected to be doing it. And I don't love flying, but I do like traveling, and I do like seeing friends and family whenever I can do that.
Was it sort of like I guess the awareness of you, and also the awareness of how friendly and available to chat with the fans you were? Was it sort of like a snowball as the series has gotten older? Well, you've noticed that your social calendar is
I've only had representation for personal appearances in the last 3 years. So prior to that, you had to look a little harder to find me. Sometimes people would stumble across me, just in life. And the first time it happened, I think it might have been the first time it happened, I was checking out at a grocery store.
Oh, no.
And the clerk who was checking me out said, "Excuse me, are you by any chance a voice actor?" And I went, yeah. And he said, do you do a game? And I said, "Yeah, I do." I said, I'm the voice of God, multiplayer announcer in Halo. I do double kill, triple. And he started to shake. Look at me. He was it was wild. And of course, I'm like, are you okay? I'm fine. It's a pleasure to meet you. I was, okay. But I mean, I just, it's very strange because I'm really old, and I've met a lot of people. It's been a while since I met anybody that I was cowed by. And I've now met a lot of people. When I go to these conventions, one of the things I'll often do is post for selfies, which means that, they'll come around behind the desk where I'm signing of the little poster thing that, has my name on it and stuff. And I'll put my arm around their shoulder, and I'd say about 80% of the time they're shaking. And it's kind of like, what? I always try to put people at their ease, because seriously, I'm a very normal person. But anyway, yeah, it's been very, very strange, and that has increased.
It's gotten crazier.
So now that I'm doing cameos and doing TikToks, doing interviews that show up on YouTube, and going to conventions and stuff, a lot more people know what I look like, which is kind of hysterical, because for the longest time, nobody knew what I looked like. They had no idea.
Just an ethereal voice.
He's actually flesh and blood.
Old, bald, fat guy. They had no idea. In fact, there was an occasion early on, I'd done a video for a friend's nephew that went on, I think it was on Facebook, and it quickly had 100,000 views or something, which was and he pointed that out to me, and it was like, oh, well, that's cool. And one person seeing that video said, "I thought he was a big black guy." Nope, sorry, just an old white guy. Isn't that wild?
That's great.
I remember in at least when I was really young, like in middle school, Halo was still kind of neck and neck with the biggest video games in the video game industry. And the kids would be running around the cafeteria or the playground, and what they were doing, because they'd double kill, triple kill, trying to imitate you and doing terrible impressions of it. There were so many myths, school ground myths of who you must have been.
Really? That is,
yeah, there was one kid was yeah, I know who it is. It's one of the developers. He actually does the voice. Then there was another one saying, no, it's the voice of the Master Chief. It's the same guy who's doing there were just so many rumors and myths about who you must
That
be.
is so interesting. And
Yeah.
I mean, and again, it was kind of fun because when people didn't know what I looked like and discovered me, I was doing a play playing Malvolio in 12th Night at a theater in Arizona. We were in Tucson, and it was a school performance. And afterwards, there was a talk back, and I always go to the talk backs. And we were sitting there, and I put in by then I was putting in my program that I was, involved with Halo. And this young woman stood up and she said, it says in your bio that you're one of the voices in Halo. What voice do you do? And I said, well, I'm the guy that does, Kilimanjaro. And the entire auditorium broke out in this huge scream. It was like, the whole audience. The best part was the rest of the actors who were sitting on stage all turned and looked at me like, what the fuck
What's going on?
Because after that, they wanted to talk to me about Halo, and all the people who were there were talking about Shakespeare were like,
Just derailed the whole thing.
totally. I walked out, and the whole class had stayed afterwards to get a picture of me with the entire class. And again, the actors were walking past kind of.
You ruined this serious theatrical production for the game where God says Kilimanjaro.
Was kind of fun. Well, I was doing, I did Inherit the Wind on Broadway with Christopher Plummer and Brian Dennehy played the mayor. And we had two youngish people. One of them was in his 20s. Ben, who was playing the young romantic lead, the one who's on trial. And then a young actor whose name I can't remember, but he had done like young Matt Damon, I think, in the film The Departed. And, and one was in his 20s, one was like just in his teens. And they both found out at the same time that I was in the game Halo, and they both had the exact same reaction. They started screaming, and it was just like, "This is cool," But interesting because again, I didn't know we had fans until I started encountering them, and then once I did, I would hear so many people say much the same things. That I had been a large part of their childhood. That I had, their friends had all gotten together. And as you said, they'd tried to impersonate me and they would all be saying a double kill, and I've often on the cameos tried when somebody mentions that to explain how I do that voice, because obviously it's not the one I'm, graced
it's
to the time.
It's not your natural speaking voice.
It's not my natural speaking. No, not at all. And in fact, when we first did it with the first game, I remember I went in to work on it, and Marty O'Donnell met me at the front desk. And it was weird because there was all kinds of, there was a cop there, a security cop. And I was kind of like, well, I never had that happen before. Nobody knew anything about the game at all, So he took me in. After a little bit of chit chat, we went into this big room where they were working on the game, and he showed me some of the visuals. And I saw a Halo ring, and it was kind of like, okay, I mean, I don't know what that is, And I saw Warthog, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. And it's like, look at the way the grass is waving in the wind. That's like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then we went into the booth and began recording. So, well, what do you want to do? And I said, you tell me. I mean, so this was just based on a general audition. And I didn't know what to do. Eventually, we did. We figured it out. But had I known I was going to be doing it for almost 25 years,
Oh, my God.
I might have tried to make it a little bit easier on myself because it's brutal. It's I can get through like a day of signings and meeting fans and stuff. But doing it for the game itself, sometimes being in a booth and going after line after line after line of like my vocal cords get absolutely torched.
How long does it take? Because I'm trying to think now. There's like probably 50 different medals. Is it like multiple takes of the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. The way that we have always done it, and I assume the way we will continue to do it, is that when I first started going in that first day, I was in a little room, a recording booth within the larger recording studio that they had out at Microsoft. And it's about the size of an old telephone booth, not a whole lot larger than that. And I would walk in the door, close it behind me so it'd be, quiet. And then in front of me would be a music stand in those days with a pile of copy about that thick. And on each page, there would be a list of lines and phrases, and there'd probably be 50, 60 a page.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a lot. And there was a window in front of me through which I could see the sound engineer and the script writer. And that was pretty much all it ever was. I mean, Marty would drop by and visit. But when we went to the recording, then I would do 3 different reads of every line.
Oh my God.
So if you can imagine, I would do double kill, double kill, double kill. And they'd go, okay, we'll take 2. Okay, keep going. We'll continue. And it's like, okay, we go all the way. Normally, actually, we do it in sequences. So I do all the kill streaks. I do all of those. And then they'd say, okay, let's go back to line 15. Can you give us more? Can you make them a little bit quicker? Can you make them a little bit, pull it back, push it forward, whatever it was. And we did that for like 4 days, as I recall, maybe 5, on the first game, because there were so many things that did not end up in the game. I think at that point, they weren't sure what the final product was going to look like. They never know. So you often end up recording more than they're ever going to use. I was talking about this. Somebody online asked me which team I preferred, red or blue. And I said, well, actually, I kind of like green, but they don't have that. When we did it before, there were about a dozen teams. So, if the line was go, right, it would be blue team, go, red team, go, green team, go, or whatever it was. I mean, it was like a dozen of those. Every line that involved the teams.
Oh my God.
And it was just, then it would just do, but it's just like, okay. But, you do whatever they need for you to do because they have an idea about what the game is. And I never have had.
Yeah.
Nobody ever explained to me anything other than, okay, now it's getting more exciting. So can you read?
I don't know what these words mean, but you seem enthusiastic about it.
Yeah. So, the example I always point to, I can't remember when it was that this happened, but I got the line zombie killing spree.
Oh, hell yes.
Excuse me. Are there zombies? And they were like, uh-huh. And I said, can you explain that? And they were like, no. And it's like, need to know. Gotcha. No problem. All right, fine.
Oh my God, zombie killing spree. That my favorite mode in Halo Reach was the zombie mode.
Yeah. So, half the time, I didn't know what specifically this was going to be for. And, you sign NDAs where you say you're not going to talk about the game. So now happily, and this has always been the case, because being a voice actor, unlike being a stage actor, where you have to learn the lines, you never learn the lines when you're doing voice acting. You've got a script in front of you. You're trying to make it sound like you're just saying these things off the top of your head. But, you're not. They're in front of you, which means the moment I walk out of the studio, I pretty much forget everything I've done that afternoon. Just gone. So, I might mention, I think there was a point where I was mentioning, it's like, oh, yeah, I went and did some recording. And they said, are there any lines you can tell us about? And I said, no, because I can't remember what I did.
Something about zombies and red team. That's so interesting hearing, I guess the experience of recording it. Do you remember some of us Halo fans, we overly obsess about the details and the intricacies of each Halo game. And there has been this amazing emotional progression of how the Halo announcer sounds from game to game, and we all have our own different preferences of them. Like in Halo 1, your delivery was very like chill and very mellow. That's the very relaxed and laid back.
Interesting, because that's not how I remember the recording session.
Really?
No. And in fact, every time I go in to record, they say, do you want to listen to what you did in the last game? And I always think, really? You want to spend your time? Okay, I can do it. And I listen to myself and I go, okay, I think that's what I do. So there was never a case where I thought, well, that's not true. That is not integrity. There was a point where I was being directed more, I think it's fair to say, when 343 came in. With the Bungie years, I just came in and they mostly what they would say would be, can you pick up the tempo a little bit? I don't hear myself in that way, I mean, I certainly hear myself while I'm recording. And there's no question that I love the sound of that voice that I do. I may have gotten carried away. I don't know. But, I at one point, this must have been with 5, I think, because I kept getting these notes about the adjustments they wanted. And I said, could we just go back and listen to like Combat Evolve? They were like, oh, sure. And we brought it back up. And then they were like, oh, you're fine, Ben. And it's like, okay. So that's the story from my vantage point. There may be a very different response from the 343 people. They might very well say, it's like, well, he lost it the time he came in and did 5. He was out of control. He was something special. I don't know, But so far as I know, as I say, I was just out meeting all people at the 343, Halo Studios now, this past week. And they could not have been nicer, So I think everything's good as far as what I do. And, it's going to be coming down the pike.
That's interesting. I always felt like I got the sense that with Halo 4, it sounded almost like the energy you were channeling was kind of almost like an announcer. Or not like, oh, my God. Yeah, obviously. But like a sportsy vibe that's hyping people up.
I mean, again, some of that may have been the direction. If I was told it's like, okay, now it's getting very exciting. You got to hear that excitement. It might have been that. One of the things that we did when we first started doing the voice, this is what Marty said. He said, now you auditioned for Master Chief, did you? And I said, yes. He said, what did you do for that? And I did. Everybody was told to be Clint Eastwood. So you're doing it, kind of like that. Being very much that sort of thing. Okay, keep that. He said, you do Monster Truck Rally? I went, Monster Truck Rally. Well, pull that back a bit, but we'll put all that into the mix. And he said, you did the Alien too? And I said, yeah, because I read an Alien. And I read sort of like this, evil guy. And so, that's how the voice actually came together. So it may be that maybe Monster Truck Rally got a little.
That's an insane combination.
Like, oh, what? What did I do wrong? Oh, but
that's an insane combination of ingredients to create. Okay, so Clint Eastwood, Monster Truck Rally, and an Alien.
Yeah.
That's not. That's not the answer I think I was expecting.
That was exactly how it went down, as I remember it. Now, it's been a third of my life since I walked in and worked on it, but I do remember all the things I just told you. I remember, it's interesting. I just got a message from Jay Windland, who was the sound designer, who was in all my sessions. And he said, we could tell stories. And I said, could we though? I would love to hear your stories because I'd love to hear your perspective on it. When I'm doing what I'm doing, all I hear is what's coming through here. And if people say, great, let's keep going, I assume, okay, I guess we're on the right track. But I do and again, I would love to talk to Jay about this because he would have been there when we were figuring out the voice, and he may have a different memory of it. I'm going to have to do that. And then it'll give me something to talk about on TikTok. It's like, I've been wrong all this time. Well, I knew what I'd done, but I didn't, or maybe it's like, it confirmed what I thought. I don't know.
I'd love to see that conversation. I reckon that'd be really interesting, like in the booth versus outside the booth.
Well, it's interesting because actually what I think I may try to do if I can talk him into it is maybe, try and get him on a TikTok with me to have that conversation. The other thing that I was talking about, I think this came up. Was I talking about this with Tim Dadabo? I can't remember who I was talking about this with. We were at a convention and we were talking because it was not as busy as we would have liked. And we were talking about playing the game itself, which people often ask me about. It's like, do you play the game? Like, I have. I'm terrible. I have had no chance to get good at it. When we did the first games, they would give me a copy of the game and I'd go, okay.
Thanks.
Next box to play it on. And they were like, no. And it's like, okay. So
put it on a bookshelf.
I give it to my son who liked video games. And I thought, well, I'll take it to a friend's house. He later admitted he had sold the copies I'd given him and pocketed the money. And it's like, well, I could have done that for crying out loud. But so and I tell the story often about how I got snookered into playing it with an intern at the Utah Shakespeare Festival who had invited me over to supper to meet his family and have a meal on a Sunday, which was our day off. And then casually after supper said, hey, you want to play some Halo? And it was like, oh, fuck you. You just go. But I thought, well, how hard can it be? I found out. Because I was, I literally didn't last more than 20 seconds before I got trapped in a corner of a building. Couldn't get out. Couldn't go left. Couldn't go right. Couldn't back up. And all the other people.
Were you stuck looking at the floor or the sky?
I think I thought it was straight ahead of me, but it was probably the floor.
Okay. That was my parents' experience as well.
It was so. And I just thought, oh, to hell with this. Well, and now I've tried it a couple of times since. I'm so terrible. I thought. And then I happened to be at a convention with Marty O'Donnell. We were sitting next to each other and we were talking and he said, oh, I can teach anybody to play the game, really well in like 2 hours. And I sort of went, really?
Anyone?
So I got in touch with him a little while ago and I said, Marty, you remember when you said you could sort of take somebody through and make them play well? I said, I'd be kind of interested. And then he said, yeah, I guess I did say that. I'll get back to you. And he hasn't so far. But I may get in touch with him because then it occurred to me, I thought, I'll bet there would be a pretty large audience who would enjoy watching Marty try to teach me how to play Halo well.
Mm-hmm. I've seen him play Halo with some other content creators before, and he tends to be a little bit sneaky sometimes. He'll get people to stand on like glass platforms and break them out from under them. So just be careful if you ever do that. Yeah, just a heads up.
Oh, he would never do that to me.
Have you ever thought of, for learning how to play Halo, I found that the mouse and keyboard is usually a lot more intuitive for people.
That's what I would have to use because I don't have a controller. I'm not set up. I don't own an Xbox. I mean, at this particular point in my life, I'm being a little bit more responsible, just a little bit, about where I spend my money and the idea of buying, this thing. And it's sort of the way I felt at the time. I had already bought 2 systems for my kids, a Nintendo and a PlayStation. And then I did this game and the game and the game. And it's kind of like, I can't afford a third. I can't for the one game, it's like, because that was game before. That's sort of where I am right now. When I first started playing games, it was on a DVD-ROM or CD-ROM, right? In the computer. Because I'd gone into audition for a game called Phantasmagoria. And I didn't get it, but I thought, this computer game thing, this is interesting. This could be something that I'm going to get more auditions for, and I should know something about it. So I bought a computer, my first computer. Prior to that, I'd gone nowhere near one. And I thought, I'm just going to be one of those dinosaurs who dies never knowing how to work a computer. So I bought one after this, audition. And I brought it home. And it was the big boxy kinds, and it was BC at that point. I wasn't into Macs yet because I think they were also cheaper. And I had bought a bunch of games. I got Myst. I got one called
Myst.
Yeah. And one called 11th Hour. And I played them. And I was blown away. I mean, for one thing, it turns out, of course, computers aren't that hard to work with. And even back then, they weren't that hard to work with. And the games were unbelievably compelling. It would be the sort of thing where I'd look up at my clock in the kitchen where my computer sat on a table back in those days when I first got it. And it'd be 2:00 and I'd sit there and I would play and I'd be going and going and going with all this stuff. And I'd look up and it'd be 5. And I thought it would be 2:30, it was 5. Then I realized this is something, and I started doing a lot more auditions for video games and did some other video games as well.
Yeah, Myst especially. That one is
amazing. Unbelievable. I mean, it was so haunting to find yourself in an environment and there was nothing else around.
Yeah, that very eerie kind of lost atmosphere.
Exactly. It was so cool. And it was also very influential, to Marty. I shouldn't be telling his stories, but I will. We were talking about this, and he said he was at his house one night. He had been doing mostly commercials in Chicago. And he was at his house one night, and a friend of his was over with his teenage son. And the teenage son had bought a beta version of a game that he had been helping these two brothers with in Spokane, Washington. It was Myst.
Wow.
So he asked if Marty wanted to play it, and Marty got on and started to play it. Was blown away, of course. And he said, I need to get in touch with these guys. Do you have contact information? The friend's son gave it to him. He wrote to the Millers and said, I want to be involved in your game. I'll do music. I'll do anything. And he, in fact, did the music for Riven, which was
the sequel to Myst. Which is the official title of the game.
Wild. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And then after that, obviously he was off and running when it comes to games.
It's funny how big the industry has gotten over the years, how it starts very small and consolidated like that. And then suddenly it's just blown into this $1 trillion industry or something like that. It's hard to imagine a scenario where you would get a similar story to that nowadays. But yeah, it's crazy.
Well, there are two actual things that have just blown up. One of them is games. Obviously, it's the biggest. But the other, which is close behind, are audiobooks. It's that both of those industries are just unbelievably immense. And they are eclipsing. I mean, for a lot of people, that's where they now work. You go and see audiobooks and it's like Meryl Streep needs to be doing an audiobook. I'm sure it's very easy work for her. Tom Hanks, all kinds of people do it. And games are exactly the same way. So, and of course, sadly, our unions, when this was all beginning, didn't take it at all seriously. So unlike television, where you could get residuals, you don't get residuals for video games. Which, and if I'd gotten residuals for video games.
Oh, gosh.
Yes, I would be living on, several more acres than I am.
You'd be recording from a golden throne right now.
Because that's what I would have done with my money. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's how I would spend it. A golden throne.
That's the kind of person you are. Living in a massive palace on your Halo money.
This is just a fake background. If you could really see what's behind me, it looks a little bit like some sort of Egyptian temple,
Caesar's palace.
Exactly. You can't see the people who are fanning me behind because of the backdrop.
There's a giant golden calf just off camera.
Exactly. That's exactly right. But yeah, so that's kind of where the industry has gone, and it's kind of extraordinary to me. It's really an amazing thing, and it's so much fun when I go to conventions because there are all these people who are involved in different either games or anime or animated series. Turns out a bunch of people that I have met have been involved with Has Been Hotel. I think that's what it's called. It's a series on Netflix, I believe. It's like a huge thing. Musical numbers. They're like Tony Award-winning actors who are in this series. And now they're showing up at conventions as well, which is very, very cool. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of voice work. It's huge.
Are there any skills that, like, I guess from your experience with like stage work, are there any skills that also carry over to voice acting and I guess vice versa?
Absolutely. In fact, it's interesting because when I first got involved in voice acting, I was working with a theater company here in Seattle called the Empty Space Theater. And they were a rock and roll theater company. I mean, they were wild. And we were doing just crazy stuff. I mean, you wouldn't look at me and think, oh, yeah, rock and roll. A little more Lawrence Welk, I suppose. But in point of fact, it was crazy. And we were very, very popular. And even when we were terrible, people were like, oh, man, watch these guys crash and burn. They were just because we went down in flames. But, nothing average about it. There were a number of people who produced commercials. And one in particular came to all of our shows and started asking us to come in and record commercials for him. He did not want what were then the voiceover types at the time, the ones who were doing kind of that voiceover sound, unless it was ironically. So he wanted actors. And yeah, I think that's exactly what most people, the first thing I would do if somebody asked me, what do you do to get started? It's like, have you ever acted before? Because if you hadn't, one of the first things you should do is get some classes. And you can do that almost anywhere you are. Somebody will teach some kind of acting. But just to understand what the dynamics are, because when you're doing voiceover, even though you're alone in a booth very often, you're still talking to somebody. And all the things that go on in a conversation between two actors will happen in a voice session. The difference being is that you're imagining the other person and how they're responding. And you're giving yourself obstacles rather than waiting for them to give you obstacles. You're deciding what sort of a person you're talking to. I mean, I get this all the time with commercials. They'll say you are like the next door neighbor having a very casual conversation. Well, that's great. Now I know what to do. It's going to be a very different sound than if they say that you're a stern teacher talking to a student or whatever. I mean, that relationship is clear. So that's the first thing you want to do. The other thing I think is very important is how are your reading skills? Because anytime you step into a booth or anywhere on a film set, anything like that, time is money. No matter how much money it may appear they have, they still don't want to waste it. And so the most important thing you need to keep in mind is don't waste their time. And if that means you're stumbling over copy because you haven't taught yourself how to read cold, just picking stuff up and going with it and making choices quickly, you're wasting their time and they're not going to want you back.
Wow.
Yes. And then the other thing that's happened is that now you've got to be an engineer, which was never the case when I started. I'd go into a studio, I'd audition. If I got the job, I'd go back to the studio. I'd go into the booth. The people would be there directing me. I would do it until they were satisfied and I would leave. I never touched a microphone. They would come in and adjust it to where they thought it made me sound best. Great. I mean, I knew how to address a mic and not like talk right into it when I was screaming. Although occasionally they'd say, Jeff, you need to. A little bit. It's like, okay. But, stuff like that. Now you've got to have your own booth, some place where you can record from home like you guys are right now. You need to know how to get good sound. because you're competing with anybody that has a studio and a mic and experience from all over the country.
Yeah, I think part of that was probably due to, I'd imagine, the pandemic as well, to some extent, with the whole recording from home thing. That's definitely impacted. And yeah, it seems as though the number of people with, foam padding on their walls in a broom closet or something has very quickly risen in the last few years.
Absolutely. It was starting to happen a little bit before then, but, obviously when the pandemic happened, there was just no other way to do it at all.
Yeah, I remember reading Lance Reddick back when he was still around. He talked about how he
wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah, he's I miss his voice a lot. He mentioned how he had basically converted a closet into his own recording thing for Destiny.
Absolutely, I think that's true of a lot of people. I mean, a lot of people, they'll see some fancy studio that somebody's, had constructed at home where they spent thousands of dollars, and they think, oh, I got to have that. And it's like, no, you don't. Not really. But you do need to know something about acoustics so you know how to treat your room. Anybody with a closet that contains clothing in it is halfway there, And then a good mic, not a Neumann necessarily, but a good mic, and there are many of them out there. It's not at all impossible to get yourself set up. Now, the problem that you can fall into, and it's the one that I've fallen into, is that I've fallen in love with gadgets. It's just like a new mic makes me the holy grail. This will be the one that doesn't record anything but me, and makes me sound like Morgan Freeman, because that's who they're always asking me to be when I audition. Really, I want to pay him, and they know they won't have to pay me that much. But you get excited about this. So there's a guy named Tom Buck who has he tries out equipment and stuff like that. He's got a studio. He's all about podcasting, and which I've thought about maybe doing. But and he tries things out and he compares mics, and I am there. I'm willing to give an hour of my time, what's left of it, to see him compare mics, or Curtis Judd, or all the different people who do it. I find it so fascinating.
Yeah, I very recently bought a new microphone that's a Shure, and it's I think this is actually my first time testing it out. So it was a bit of a late birthday present for me, and it's so far so good, but it's crazy the different varieties that you can get nowadays.
Is that a dynamic mic, or is it a cardioid?
I think it's just a cardioid, yeah. Yeah, and it's not bad, little USB powered, but it does have the XLR input as well, so I can switch things up a little if I so desire. But yeah, I'm definitely with you with the gear discussion. It's a snowball.
It is. It's just terrible. I mean, it's, oh my God. I've just put so much money into it. I've got all these microphones, and when it comes right down to it, I just use my Sennheiser MKH 416 because I love it. I like the way it gets the lower sort of register that I've got, and I always feel like I sound pretty good on it. But also, plugins for God's sake, get aboard all your listeners. It's like, what's he plug? What's he talking about? But I love all that stuff. What can I do to make the sound a little bit better? And it's fascinating.
Have you ever thought of doing like a free online seminar or something, like uploading like from the voice of God? Here's what you need to be a voice actor.
Well, actually, funny you should mention that. I have a website, which I'm thinking about going in and completely tearing apart and putting back together again. It's jeffsteitzervoiceactor.com, all one long word made up of those 4 words. And it's all lowercase, and you can find it. Shouldn't be problems to find. And in there, I decided I was going to do blogs. I don't know what possessed me, but people ask certain questions like, how did you get started in voiceover? Or, how did you get started as an actor? So I did blogs about that. And then enough people said, I've always thought I had a voice. I've been told I've got a great voice for, voiceover. And I'm really interested. What do I need to do to get started? Often I get those questions at a convention where a line is like forming behind the person. It's like, I can't talk about that right now. It's too long a conversation. Go to my website. I've done a 9-part series. I mean, sort of off the top of my head, I need to go back in because I think some of the things that are links are no longer operable. You know, there are people who've just stopped offering stuff or whatever. But I answer a lot of those questions. My first blog is, so you want to do VO. I think that was what the series was called. And I think the first line was something along the lines of, do you really? No. And then I talk about some of the things that you have to think about, because I don't think, and it's mostly the engineering part of things. You know, you got to know how to record yourself. You've got to know how to edit and master yourself to do anything these days. You know, I mean, that's expected. So that's all stuff. Now, doesn't have to cost you a fortune by any means, but you need to know a little bit about that. I think about demos. I think I talk about agents. I talk about setting up my booth. I think there's some pictures of what I set up, because I just decided I had a room downstairs next to the garage, which gets ungodly cold even in summer, but that's kind of okay. And it's pretty quiet. And I put together a 5x7, footprint, and then 7-foot tall booth made out of PVC that I had cut to the right dimensions, and just put that all together. I got vocal acoustic panels from Vocal Booth to Go, which is a great resource. And I got an adjustable table, which I mostly sit at. So that was probably not worth investing that much money in, but I got it. And I've got lights, and when you see me doing a cameo, I'm doing it from that little booth.
Wow.
I feel like, all in all, I do pretty well as far as like sound and all that kind of stuff. But
well, and that's only the audio part of things when it comes to being a voice actor. There was a brief stint where I was a couple years ago, like, I think I have the chops to be a voice actor. And little did I know that your voice has to be treated like an instrument. You have to learn how to speak as a voice actor. And I was like, oh shit, I don't have time.
That's where acting comes in.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I'll tell you, it's sort of interesting. I come from a generation who thought that acting was about losing yourself in characters. The ideal was Laurence Olivier, who worked very hard to appear completely different in everything he did. Sometimes it became like a stunt. He played this foppish character in a longish one-act play by Sheridan called The Critic. There was an intermission, and he transformed into Oedipus for Oedipus Rex and did Greek tragedy. And of course, and complete with a new nose. He was all about noses, and he played Shylock and put in teeth and wigs and all this kind of stuff. He wanted, to be somebody other than himself.
He was a performer.
He was, but that's no longer what people want. They want you. But they also, we contain multitudes. Because it's like, think about all the different people you are in the course of the day. You might be a husband, you might be a father, you might be an employee, or you might be a boss, you might be a teacher, you might be, the kinds of relationships we find ourselves in are a great way to figure out how to approach a piece of copy. Because that relationship, like I talked about a little earlier, you've got to know who's on the other end of your conversation. Right? And what that relationship is, and it's going to determine a lot of the choices you make. As far as people come up and they'll say, I do voices. And it's like, okay, but very often you'll get comments, in the specs, and they'll say they're looking for you because you're the only one of your kind. Right? Now, sometimes I'll get things, and I'll get, it's like, we're looking for somebody like a Morgan Freeman, Jeff Bridges, Gene Hackman. And it's like, they have nothing in common at all.
Completely different human beings.
I'm going to be me. And if that's, because basically, that's all you have to offer. I mean, you can do me with a dialect. You can do me with a, figured characterization. You can make yourself old or young or, grumpy or, kind of lighthearted. I mean, you can do all those kinds of things, but it's still you. David Mamet says there is no such thing as character. All you've got are the lines, And it's like, that's an interesting thought. Bill Macy believes it. And you think Bill Macy thinks that's correct? The guy from Fargo?
Yeah.
Genius in that and in so many things. But it's like, oh, that's interesting.
Do you subscribe to those beliefs? Like, what's your
more and more I do. More and more I do. Yeah, more and more I do. Because basically it's like, it's certainly, I have more to draw on when I realize I'm drawing on myself. Because if I'm drawing on something that's out there and I visualize something and I'm trying to become that, then I've got a distance to travel to become that character. Whereas if I'm looking at it, what if I were somebody who had been, a race car driver? What if I'd been raised on a farm? What if I had been, somebody who took over a corporate position? Any of those things could have happened. My family is a farming family. A lot of my family on another side with my uncle's family, they were farmers, could have been me. And I would have probably sounded differently because they sound a little bit differently as well. It's just the way they speak with the people they're around, stuff like that. But yes,
that's so interesting. Is this like, kind of like, do you think it is that as time goes on, like we understand more and more about performance and acting, like versus, 100 years ago? Or do you think it's just like new ways of approaching the craft?
Well, no, I think what it basically is that people have always acted. They've always been storytellers. And what really happened, it seems to me, and one of the reasons we still study and read Konstantin Stanislavski, who was the Russian who is responsible sort of for the way everybody acts, is that he tried to understand what the great actors that he had seen did that made them great, figuring if I can figure out how they're doing it, then we can do it too. And, the problem is that very often those actors don't know. They just thought about it. You know what I mean? They just
deep thinkers.
Yeah. And so it's like, how do you from the outside? Well, he also had the advantage of being an actor himself and a director, and he ran a company of other actors. So he could try out his ideas, much to the chagrin of his company, who is like, what do you mean you want us to do improvs? No, can't we just, we've got to get this thing, oh, he had ideas. And, then that was what was going on. And as time goes on, I think my journey has been, okay, as I continue to watch other people acting, what impresses me? There's an actor here locally in town. He's also a very good friend. When I first saw him act, I thought, what's he doing on a stage? It's dreadful. Wasn't that? It was just he was untrained. And over the years, everything he knows, he's learned from working, which I think is a very good way to learn how to do anything, actually. You can't get it out of a book. You've got to actually be up on stage, talking to another actor, trying to get something from them, trying to keep them from getting whatever they want from you in front of people and, pretending you don't notice they're there, even though you're very aware that they're there. This friend of mine, his name is Bob, and he's remarkable. He has a quality of stillness and listening that has developed over time that makes him one of the most compelling performers I know. And I think, well, that's got to be a large part of it. You know what I mean? It's like he knows how to listen. It's the hardest thing in the world to do on call. we were doing a radio drama. There are some friends here in town who work with a group called Jim French Imagination Theater. And their stuff, they've got a new Sherlock Holmes, and they do a Seattle detective, Harry Nile. They're on Sirius XM on Radio Classics.
Okay.
So I was called in to do a part. Another actor was called in, and Bob was called in. And during the reading, I'd finished my part, and then his character appeared in the story. And I was just mesmerized, and I thought, fuck, I wish I did what he did, because he did exactly enough and no more. So when you watch other actors, I find myself doing this all the time. So watching Fargo yesterday with my son, we get together and watch movies, and I was watching Fargo, which I hadn't seen in a long time. I'd forgotten so much. And I watched William Macy, who plays the car dealer who sets this horrible series of things into place. And it is an extraordinary performance because it is Bill Macy. He's not, he's doing a dialect, but he's how he would sound if he had grown up in an area where you spoke that way. That's all, And what he's doing is he's playing moment to moment, and you see all the things he's going through. You can't take your eyes off it. It's a brilliant performance.
Got to go back and rewatch it. I feel like I haven't seen Fargo in quite a while, so
I think you'll be surprised. And of course, then you see this, oh my God, look at all those people. I also loved it because it was shot in around Minneapolis. That's where the Coen brothers are from. And they used a lot of my friends in the film.
Really? That's cool.
Oh, look, there's that. Oh my God, there's Sally. Yeah, it's great fun.
What did you think of the show?
What did I think of the show? Oh,
Fargo show.
No, I never saw it. I haven't watched it. I've heard excellent things about it. I always get a little bit, I don't know, I get a little resistant to shows that come from movies, sometimes from books, and often from other shows like British versions. And I think The Office with Ricky Gervais, I just couldn't get into the American version, they're wonderful actors, but it was like there was something so much nastier, horrible, and there was so Ricky Gervais at cringe-worthy situations where you're going, oh, stop it right.
Yeah, it's painful to watch.
Yeah,
it is. You know what I mean? He doesn't do any special pleading for any of his characters. Although eventually, sometimes you do find yourself. Yeah. The only thing I think of that I think captures the tone of that in a similar way is Veep with Julia Louis-Dreyfus, where the entire cast of characters are so reprehensible.
It's like the kind of show where nobody learns anything, and it's almost like the inverse at the end. They have become worse people as opposed to better people.
Absolutely. I just love that stuff. But anyway, so yeah, and some of the longer shows. So I haven't seen Fargo. I suspect at some point I will watch it. But that film is so perfect. My son and I were talking, and we were trying to decide if that was their best film, because it's very, very funny in many places. And given how really horrible the story is, it's hard to imagine they're getting laughs, but they do.
Yeah, it's just like at some point you start laughing because you're like, I can't believe it that this happened and that it's getting worse.
Wow. Yeah.
It just becomes absurd.
They're really extraordinary. But then I think we live in a time where there's so much good content. I could go on for over an hour about all my Jeff's picks, things that I think are just that I'm loving. Or I just rewatched all 6 seasons of Justified, which is one of my favorite series because I think everybody in it is this spectacular, and it's so intriguing watching the way it develops. They really played the long game quite well, I thought.
What do you think about you used the term content? And that's actually something that people have kind of noticed is, and like I do it too. I just refer to like media as content now. People have started to get this feeling like entertainment, movies, shows, like audio dramas and stuff. They're being treated more like content as opposed to stories that are being told. And content is actually starting to become a bit of a derogatory term to refer to stuff that just drags out.
It's just a way of describing it. I don't sort of think of it as like, oh, content are those series I don't watch because I think they're, not that interesting and I'm predictable and the acting's just so. I think that's what a lot of people may be thinking of when they talk about.
Yeah, that's obviously not what you were referring to. It more like sparked an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. And I want to refer to something like that as content.
Yeah, amidst the rise of things like generative AI, and all of that stuff, it's hard for me to lose faith because I do see like people getting around it with stuff that is genuinely creative and human driven.
Yeah, I mean, it's here to stay. It's not going to go away. I really firmly believe that anybody who is a performer or a writer or any kind of creator has a very individual set of experiences that have made them who they are. And unless you can download their lives completely, you're never going to get what they would give you on their own. The AI can look at what they've done and give you more of that. And they can maybe try to predict what they would do if they were still creating. But I suspect that it's never going to be what it would have been, Because again, humans we're like cats that, somebody wants to herd. It's like, you just never know where they're going to go. I mean, how often has it happened where somebody whose work you absolutely adored decided, I'm going on a different direction and you can join me or not? I'm a huge fan of Joni Mitchell. And I remember, how taken aback her fans were when she stopped being sort of a folk person and got into jazz, or Bob Dylan going electric, or the Coen brothers going from Fargo to the Big Lebowski. It's like,
yeah.
I remember when I saw the Big Lebowski, I thought, what?
And what the fuck is this?
This is genius. What was my problem? Well, you weren't prepared for it. So how is AI going to predict what their next movie would be in that situation?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so vindicating hearing somebody else say that. As I've gotten older, I've started to appreciate pieces of art more from the perspective of the person making it than the product itself. I'm like, I just want to see what the guy's interested in.
Well, and there's a wonderful thing. Joni Mitchell, in one of her concerts, somebody was shouting out titles of songs they wanted her to sing. She was going, nobody ever shouted out to Van Gogh, paint Starry Night again.
Starry Night 2.
So many playwrights who I've always maintained always have one story and they just give you variations on it. What happens is at a certain point, this kind of exhaustion sets in, which is why I think Arthur Miller's late plays fell out of favor for American audiences and reviewers. And Tennessee Williams' last plays fell out of favor for a lot of people. Now, some of them are being reconsidered and going, oh, he was just doing something very different, right? We didn't see that at the time. We just saw how it wasn't Death of a Salesman or Streetcar Named Desire. That's true of all writers.
It's interesting you say that because on my YouTube channel, I make these hour and a half long documentaries about a gun from Halo or a barrel or something in the history of it from game to game, which, as you can imagine, gets kind of tedious. The history of I've been researching writer's block and the history of it throughout. Mm-hmm. And some cultures believed that if you were a creative type, like a writer or something, you had to cut off at the age of 30 because they thought there was some supernatural thing that came and sapped away your creative spirit if you kept creating.
I've got 4 years.
We didn't understand at the time that it was writer's block. It was just feeling trapped within your creation.
Well, I mean, because again, it's we work so much from what we know. One of the things we have to do is go out and know new things, because once you've experienced more experiences, you've got more material to work from. and anybody's perception. This is the thing that's so intriguing, is that we never stop evolving in the course of a whole lifetime. We're never in the same place 2 days in a row. Physically we're different, mentally we're different, experientially we're different. We keep changing.
Perfection is an ideal, not a reality.
Absolutely. It can't be, because, you'll have new ideas, new experiences, new perspectives. And a lot of the things that you thought when you were like 15, you don't think those things anymore. You've grown, you've evolved. And it's one of the great things about our lives. At the same time, there's a price to be paid, because the older you get, the less energy you have. The more you sort of feel like you're bouncing up against the same notions and ideas and trying to break out of it. And change is scary, and it is often daunting and difficult. And, here I find myself, I'm in my 75th year as a human being. And I find myself going, I just want to sit on the couch. There was a time when I used to climb in my car and I'd drive to the Midwest every year, woohoo. I loved it. And I would often drive and stop once in the course of driving to Minneapolis for a 3-hour nap. And then I just keep going. I was out of my mind. I couldn't do that now. When I said earlier, it's like I'm not doing stage work. It's like energy is one of those things. And also, it's not challenging in the way it once was. Most of what I would have been asked to do, because they wanted me to audition for, I could have done it all too easily. It wasn't interesting to me. If you want to do really big, grand, amazing, insightful acting as an actor, you need that kind of a spirit. And my problem is that I'm not finding that kind of material that I can, sink into with both hands and go, let's get digging, Yeah,
it's like, this is going to be amazing what we're going to create.
Yeah. I'm not saying it doesn't happen or that it's not out there. It just wasn't being offered to me. And it's kind of like, okay, that's fine. Then I'll, reread. I'll either reread all the books I read before and see if I look at them differently, which I am, or I'll read all the books I hadn't read yet, and see how I feel about that. So, yeah, I get to do that. Plus, see my friends, which is great, and my children, which is above all the most important thing for me.
It's what keeps then saying, double kill for 25 years exciting on your end.
Well, because it's like you're being asked to walk into a room and perform on demand. And because I don't get the script ahead of time, usually. So I've got to go in there, take a look at it, and just throw things at the wall. And it gets the juices flowing. And the other thing is that when I get something where my reading is so evil, or, the line is so... I remember when we did Cheney Mania, they turn off the sound from the booth just so they won't end up on the recording. And after I'd done the 3 takes, they turned the sound back on and they were all laughing, And I thought, I got it. I still got it. I got them, They were howling with laughter. And I had a hard time not howling with laughter myself. But that's fun. That is still fun.
Being the voice of God.
Yeah,
on the topic of medals, I'm interested in knowing, is there like a make-believe medal for Halo that you would like to pitch potentially?
They've never asked my opinion about anything like that. I'd have to think about that. No, at one point I was asked, it's like, do you ever improvise? It's like, never. No, not once. Nobody ever says, just, say some things. Yeah, it's like, it's always written down, and that's what I do. And it's actually very comfortable for me. Very often when people ask you to improvise, like in a commercial situation, it's like, well, I don't know what to say. I may not know your product. I may not know how I feel about your product. Who am I in this situation? Am I a happy customer or a not happy customer? Whatever it is, so it's a lot easier to be a kind of text detective get the lines and figure out what to do with them. So sorry, Andrew, I do not have any suggestions for the people, but I'll work on that. Maybe I'll go in the next time and see if I can bring a list. And
throw a couple curveballs their way, and we'll see if they land in the game one day. Yeah.
Have I said curveball? Maybe that's what I should say. I don't.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good one, actually, because there is a game type in Halo that's all about, I'm going to sound a bit suspicious here, but about balls. So it's.
Are you familiar at all with the various creatures of the Halo universe?
No. Well, no. I mean, I do know the Flood, of course. I know brutes because I had a friend who was the voice of a brute.
Oh,
yeah. The original cast of the game, when it was first done, was almost entirely local performers, with a few people from Chicago. Keith, obviously, showed up quite early, and he's from LA. But the process of getting more and more people from out of town really began once the game was a big success. And that's when you suddenly start seeing Ron Perlman and Nathan Fillion and Peter Dinklage and all those kinds of folks. They weren't around at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just suddenly seeing the production value go up and up.
Yeah. And also, I think a lot of people, want to be a part of that. It's like Samuel Jackson has a great story about desperately wanting to be in Star Wars and about how that came to be. And when he, went to get his costume fitting, he decided he was going to be, he says, I'll be a stormtrooper, which is a very amusing idea. But, he was being outfitted and he didn't understand why they were putting him in those clothes because they looked like Jedi clothes. And then he found out what he was going to be playing. It's like, what? He was such a fan. And I think a lot of people, when something, ends up being successful, they sort of want to warm their own hands on that flame, and be a part of it. And I mean, it's a very, very, I remember being told this years and years ago and then having it confirmed by Marty that when the game, after it first came out, Microsoft was hearing from Hollywood agents whose clients wanted to be in the game. And at one point, there was a very real suggestion that Master Chief should be done by Tom Cruise and Cortana by Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
And I think the folks at, Microsoft were like, that understandably, it sounded pretty exciting. But Marty said, I don't think that's a good idea. I said, because I think what people responded to were these people, and the way they come across in the game. They just, something about those people, the actors, their voices, what they were doing. It's like, that is the game they came to love. And
people are still like that. Like anytime any of you guys say like, yeah, we haven't recorded our lines yet for the next Halo, the internet loses their, launch an attack, like, don't you dare replace them. Drag them back.
They tried to, but it just didn't happen,
that was around 2012-ish, 2011, right?
Or I think it was, they tried to replace folks when 343 first came in. And again, I think 343, it's very interesting. I having toured the museum and talked to the people who have been involved with that company now for a while, it's very, very interesting to get their perspective on things and it's very easy to forget. There's not a single person who works on that game or ever has worked on that game who's trying to kill it. They all go to work. Absolutely.
They're not trying to destroy their job.
Not at all. I mean, they want to make something as remarkable as the game, that came into being back in 2001. So that's worth keeping in mind. At the same time, they also, I think, want to put their imprint on it. What I always compare it to is, think about when Tim Burton was doing Batman, right? When he was doing Batman, it was like, whoa, what? This is wild, because he's got such a strong personality. Well, then apparently the studio was having problems with him because he was expensive and he was so weird. And,
Joel Schumacher.
The second movie was so dark and so disturbing, and all the sort of franchise stuff that they were going to try and do. You can't give toys in the McDonald's
of the penguin. You can't
but that character is like, it's so creepy and terrible stuff. So they were happy to see him go. And then, they brought in Joel Schumacher. And what does Joel Schumacher do? He can try to be Tim Burton. Yeah. But he can't be, because there's only one of those. Going back to what I was saying earlier about actors, there's only one Tim Burton. You know what I mean? And it's like, anybody who tries to be Tim Burton, it's like when Brian De Palma was always trying to be Alfred Hitchcock. It's like, yeah, that's fine, but you're not Alfred Hitchcock. So stop trying so hard to use all of his, film techniques. Well, Shoemaker had a choice: either try and be Burton, which he couldn't do, or be as different from Burton as he could. And at the time, he wanted to take it back to the TV series, which, I, for one, hated Batman very seriously. And I didn't like it being done campy. As a kid reading the cartoons, I was all in. It was real,
Oh my God. I love my admittance to you is that Adam West's Batman is my favorite incarnation.
No, it just because the stakes didn't exist. You know what I mean? There were no.
That's why I loved it.
Yeah, I just, that's like all those. It's
I love hard.
Well, I mean, it's like, it was very interesting seeing the Fantastic Four movie, because I, at one time, owned the first 2 issues of that series. I was there when it first came out, and I was like, what? I love the Fantastic Four. So, like,
the new one?
I've been waiting not the movie. No, the comic strip from way back. Gotcha, I loved it. So then I see the movie and I see what they're doing with it. And it's like, okay, I see what they're doing, but it's not really what I fell in love with. But I mean, all that stuff, like I Don't Say, Clobber in Time, all those things, I understand why they did that. Once again, they were trying to take it someplace. And a lot of the fans who love it wanted to be what it was back in the 1960s. Everything changes. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you either want to change with it or move on to something else. There's a world of artistic endeavor to enjoy.
Can we assume that your favorite Batman is Michael Keaton then?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. And at the time I remember thinking, what? No, it's all wrong. But I thought he balanced, this character. What was brilliant about it, it was more like the viewer. Do you know what I mean? The thing about all those heroes are, you're not those characters. You're not lantern jawed. You're not incredibly strong. He was fallible. He was human. But when the chips were down, he was effective. He
even seemed a little bit psychotic, the way he played Bruce Wayne.
You want to get nuts?
Yeah, exactly. But, again, it wasn't like that was never a part of it in a weird way. But it was just that he was sort of bringing it to the surface. The Christian Bale one, I thought the villains kind of stole a bit of the movie from him. Certainly with the Joker, it's kind of like you couldn't look at anything else, because that was like, what's he doing? Crazy. And with Robert Pattinson, the villains were all sort of interesting and stuff, but it was like so dark, and everybody is so flawed that it's kind of hard to root for folks. That's just my take. Everybody is welcome to disagree with me as much as they want. Because, again, it's not important what I think. It's important to me. But what I think isn't necessarily important to anybody else. If Adam West is your favorite Batman, Bennett, you stand up for that.
I like the Penguin, all of his henchmen having shirts that say henchmen on it.
Absolutely. Yes. And I got to say, this is the thing that's sort of brilliant about that is that, you know, you had all these people who were really pretty good actors and they committed. I mean, Burgess Meredith.
Oh my God,
was a
Penguin
major star who was sort of, you know, fading a bit by the time that came around. But he attacked that with as much conviction and integrity as if he was doing Shakespeare.
I still, sometimes my audience, I call them, I'm like, all right, my fine feathered finks, let's get up to some mischief.
Exactly. And I mean, as much as I love a lot of the people who played those roles in the films, Frank Gorshin is like a perfect Riddler. He really is. From that series. And Cesar Romero was a wonderful Joker.
Oh my God, Cesar Romero's Joker is so good.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot about that. It got to the point, though, where it's like everybody, you know, talk about wanting to be involved. It's like, no, we got a new character and he's called the Bucket Guy, or, you know, because they've got an actor they want to get into. And it's like,
wasn't Riddler played by like 3 different people over the course of that show? Something like that. They kept swapping out the actors and stuff.
Well, the other actors probably got work or died as older people taking those roles.
Yeah, I don't think they were worrying about consistency or...
Yeah, I don't think they were either.
Yeah, it's probably more likely that, I mean, given that particular point in time in the resolution of TVs, they were probably hoping, like, if someone, you know, has this playing in the background, maybe they won't notice and we'll be able to get away with it. But yeah, nowadays with high definition remasters, we can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with that particular series, they aimed it at kids.
Yeah,
like Superman was aimed at kids, and it's like, if you're a kid, great, you know. But I was, you know, as I say, different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, gentlemen, I hate to say this, but I think I'm going to have to take off here pretty quick.
Yeah, I was going to say we're coming up to 2 hours.
Old chatting with you.
If I can ask one thing before we hop off, what do you think is the next step for Halo's announcer? What's the evolution of Halo's voice of God? Are you going to be polite and meek, or are you going to try to be rude and abrupt while delivering your next lines?
I don't know. It's going to depend on the lines, I would imagine. I had a very interesting experience. You know, when Infinite came out, a lot of people said, it's like, you're hardly in the game. And I went, well, I did my usual recording. Yeah, I did as much as I'd done. So I thought, but again, you know, it's like, I'm not consulted about all this stuff. And then once the game had come out, they started doing what I think they're called chapters. And they're new sections that you can play. Mm-hmm. And so there was this one where the voice that I do is taken over by a malevolent.
Yeah.
What is it called?
Yeah, the
name, but I can't.
Eratus or something.
Something. And I remember when I went in to record that, I was reading the lines and it was like, is this your sort of subtle way of saying I'm done? And they were like, no, you're coming back. And it was like, okay, good. That's good to know. I didn't know. And when we were recording it, they said, okay, now at this point, your character. And I went, I got to stop you here. I'm not a character. I'm the no, you're a character. You're a character. I'm going, since when? And they said, for the whole length, you know, from the beginning, you've been a character. And I said, okay, I never understood. I just thought I was the announcer. But inside, what I was thinking is, well, if I'm a character, where's my Funko Pop? I don't have a Funko Pop.
I want to see a Jeff Steitzer Funko Pop.
I'd buy it.
Oh, I mean, please. What is going to be a guy with a sweater wearing a, you know, shawl, bald, you know, kind of baggy eyes and stuff in front of a mic? Who would buy that?
This would be like a little double kill icon.
Well, you know, you'd have to be able to push a button, and then I'd have like 3 things I could say.
that infection thing, the Aratus taking control.
Yes.
That was so awesome. The context was that your regular multiplayer shenanigans was being hacked and hijacked by evil. So it was fun hearing you like glitching out and, losing control.
Job security is a lie was a great
what's going on?
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Because when job security is a lie, I'm going, do I mean that people? It was pretty hysterical.
Yep.
So as far as what, comes up, it'll be a question of what's in the script and what they're looking for. I don't have any commitments at this point for the future, except that, they know I'm available. And they made, in the last couple of months or so, I've gotten to know a number of people out at Halo Studios. They've made it very, very clear that as far as they're concerned, I'm very much a part of the Halo family. And I'm unbelievably grateful for that, even if I never did another bit of work for them. Just knowing that I have been involved with this unbelievable game, this will be the thing that defines my existence as a performer. I've been on Broadway twice. I've done regional theater all over the country. I've directed 180 professional productions. I've run a theater. I've taught. None of that matters. I'm the voice of God.
Hell yeah.
Yes.
And that's, I just need to decide, if I was going to have a tombstone, I've just realized I'm not going to have a tombstone. But if I were, it would be interesting to decide what it's going to, what it would be, unfreaking believable or game over. Maybe I don't know. Over. That might be it. Anyway.
Well, Jeff, if you do have to run, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. My face is hurting because I've been grinning ear to ear the whole time. This has been phenomenal. So thank you so much.
It's been a workout for the cheek muscles.
Yeah.
Still got it. I'm a clown at heart. I love when people laugh. Nothing makes me happier. So that is a treat indeed.
Yes, you've been making people across the world, even as far as down here in Australia, laugh for 25 years, and we're looking forward to hearing more from you. And again, just thank you so much. It's been amazing.
My pleasure, guys. Take care.
Could I be so bold as to ask if you could shout out our channels in your Halo announcer voice?
Sure. What is your channel?
Oh my gosh. My hands are sweating now. Well, Andrew, you want to go first?
So my channel name, this is a bit of an unconventional one. It's Laperladen.
Laperladen?
Or Laperladen. So Laper and then Larden. It's a bit of a funny pronunciation.
One more time.
Laperladen. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Laperladen.
Yep, that's it.
Oh boy.
And what is yours?
Late night gaming.
Late night gaming? Late night gaming.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
That's it. We've peaked. It's all downhill from here, Taras. It's all downhill from here.
I feel like I'm floating on a cloud. Oh my gosh.
Guys, thank you so much. It's been great chatting.
Thank you.